1. Every so often we get a celebrity in the restaurant. I've never been here when it's happened. We're not too far from our city's main concert venue, but the owner still has a strict no comping meals for anyone based on star power policy that we're all appraised of when we're hired. His logic being, it'll start as just one exception and turn into all sorts of D-listers sniffing around looking for an ego boost. Ironically, this has never been a problem because the 1 or 2 times we've had real celebrities in, they have never expected a free meal. They've paid and tipped well. It's only the D-listers who act all shocked when their check comes. But we almost never get them either, so it's really no big deal. Until last week. We're located right by my college, and a girl who attends my college was recently on the Dr. Phil show. She was not a featured guest, she did not even appear in person. She was just teleconferenced in for like 3 total minutes to weigh in on the featured guest's, a friend of hers from high school I think, relationship. But because she was on TV, she thought she was the hottest thing to have ever happened on campus. I'd heard a few people joking about how she was going around telling everyone she was a celebrity, and how she kept expecting people to recognize her. It really sounded cringy and terrible. But I don't know her. I hadn't even seen the show, so what did I care? It was fun gossip for 10 seconds, but I quickly forgot about it. However, the girl's self-absorption wasn't completely baseless. There are a lot more students on campus than usual this summer, so many took gap semesters to avoid Zoom school during COVID. Not much is happening around here as we ease back into normal life, so people did get unreasonably excited about someone from our school being on national TV. So, she was sort of being treated like a celebrity. She was getting a lot of special attention. She even got some free things on campus and had some people ask to take a photo with her. In an ironic sense, but she didn't understand that. So she's decided to start testing the waters off campus, and I guess met with some success, because most of the nearby businesses are staffed with students. She soon appeared in our restaurant. She was a nightmare from the moment she stepped in the door. I didn't recognize her at first, but it all clicked as she was demanding a 4-top despite being a party of 1. We were okay with it because we weren't especially busy. She didn't make eye contact with her server. She wasn't in my section, but I ate up every second of her visit with us once I realized who she was. The first thing I heard her say after the server said hi and introduced himself was, "Menu, water, new fork," like she was writing out a list. Her server was only just bumped up from trainee status and he's barely 16, so it especially sucked that she was dumped on him. He's incredibly shy and sweet. If I'd anticipated the shitstorm this woman blew in with her, I'd have swapped with him, but this all happened pretty quickly and I'll usually do anything to avoid serving classmates I don't like. It's rare I don't like a classmate I haven't met, but there's a first time for everything. Of course, nothing on our menu was acceptable to her as is. She had to get a ton of substitutions and additions. Even her side salad of mixed greens had to be, not kidding, unmixed. She wanted each lettuce but separately on the plate. Her server explained that the greens come pre-mixed, but she just stared blankly past him and went, "So, separate it?" As though it were the most obvious thing ever. The kitchen actually accommodated all of her requests because it was a really slow day and there were easy enough solutions to each thing. But she still sent at least one of her plates back. In the 20 or so minutes it took her food to come out, she asked us how much longer it would take, 4 times. She demanded we change the music we had on to a playlist of hers instead. She made comments about the lighting. By the time she was finished eating, we were seconds away from throwing her out. Her waiter asked if everything was all right and if she needed anything else. She said no, so he said he'd be right back with the check. I could tell from her face, even as far away as I was, that she wasn't expecting a check. She looked all sour and twisted. I was dying internally. It was so satisfying. But then she stood up and calmly just walked out the door. I wasn't sure what I was seeing at first. I thought maybe she'd gone to get her wallet from her car or something. But this isn't the kind of place where a lot of people drive. and I just knew in my gut I had to follow up because her server definitely wouldn't. I went out the door and, yep, she was traipsing down the street, tapping away on her phone like nothing was wrong in the world. I called out to her and she half turned around, then realizing I was from the restaurant, tried to pretend she hadn't heard me, and went right back to walking. Quickening her pace a little, I would have laughed if I wasn't so pissed. So I jogged to catch up with her and was trying to keep the situation nice and calm, and allow her to save as much face as possible, and was like, "Oh, hi, sorry, there's just still the matter of the bill," knowing damn well she didn't forget, but figuring confronting her would just feed into unnecessary drama. She looks at me in total disbelief and says she was going to Instagram her meal with us, and that's typically enough when she goes out, without a hint of sarcasm or embarrassment. So, I did know who she was because her reaction to being on TV was such a laughingstock on campus. But, and maybe this was a little mean, but I couldn't resist, I went, "Sorry, who are you?" And she fucking lost it, insisting I knew exactly who she was and that I was just jealous of her and that, wait for it, that's why I was forcing her to pay for the food she ordered at the restaurant. I didn't want to be gratuitously mean, so rather than antagonize further, though it was very low-hanging fruit, I just told her, "Look, if you don't plan to pay, we'll have to involve the police." She laughed and said, "Well, if you don't know who I am, you won't be able to find me, right?" Honestly, she had me there, but I didn't need to admit to her that I really knew who she was, because for all she knew we had security cameras, or would just describe her really well. So I let her walk off and I went back to the restaurant and called the police. It was absurdly easy to track her down because I did know who she was and she was posting geotagged posts online all day, including a super angry post about how she'd eaten at our restaurant and it had been terrible. That positive mention had never happened, by the way. Not that it would have gotten her out of paying, but still. So she incriminated herself and led the police right to her. I doubt the cops would have followed up so diligently if it were only us, but apparently she'd walked out on a couple of other places that genuinely didn't recognize her and expected her to pay up, and posted angrily about how the businesses sucked, further incriminating herself. They didn't know who she was, but they described her well enough, and that paired with the post was enough for the police to drag her in. Our trainee server actually had to go down somewhere and identify her. He was terrified when he was first asked, but when he came back he was totally giddy and thought the whole experience was pretty cool. At least cooler than working his shift. So I wish I'd been at work the time John Goodman was there instead, but this was better than nothing. 2. For context purposes, I work at a privately owned, non-chain restaurant with 2 separate floors. It's my first time working in the industry, and I've been here for 2 years now. I've found in that time that I absolutely love my work, but recently found that I hate my job. Recently, we've been having the issue of being low on staff, like most places these days. But what I really mean by low is that we have a large but extremely untrained body of staff. For example, I'd estimate out of the 30 to 40 some people we have, 3, maybe 4 of them know how and are experienced enough to open the entire front of house in the mornings, with little to no help. God forbid we schedule any more than 1 server to open even on the weekends. I'm a big proponent of understanding the entire picture. Knowing how to open, close, bus, host, food run, and bar back can give you valuable skills and knowledge that can help you be a better server. Our management, unfortunately, is not. Well, last night my manager comes up to me while I'm bartending and says something to the effect of, "Would you like to bartend tomorrow night? We didn't schedule anyone." Let me think about it. I open in the morning, so that would be a long shift, 13 to 14 hours. He gives me a few hours to get back to him. Cool. In that time, I go over multiple scenarios where we could ask this person or that person to move around, maybe we could get somebody to open for me, etc. The problem? The 3 of us that open front of house are already scheduled to work or asked off. There's 1 woman who opens that works 11 to 9, but the decision was made mostly out of spite that essentially she's gonna be too moody. No joke. His decision,
"Well, we don't need a bartender. They'll be fine."
Okay? Keep in mind, this man just told me last week how crazy busy Thursdays have been lately. This morning, feeling generous, I offered, hey, if you let me out at 8 just to divvy up the bartender's closing duties, I'll bartend for you at night and work 8 to 8. By closing duties, I essentially mean mopping, running glassware through, and turning everything off. It's not much. But you're basically the last person out, and excuse me for not wanting to be a philo on a volunteer basis. I think that's a pretty generous offer, no? Not good enough.
"If you're not gonna close, then you might as well just go home. That's the entire point."
So, what happens the other 5 hours of that shift? Are bartenders useless to you? Do you not value my work? More importantly, do you not value the quality of your bar service on an exceptionally busy night? Is my offer to work 12 hours to fix the mistake you made not good enough? Like I said, I love the work I do. I love bartending. I love serving guests. I could work a 16-hour shift and go home with a shit-eating smile on my face. It's not the fact that they wanted me to close that bothers me. It's that offering to help out by pulling an 8 to 8 wasn't good enough for them, and the disturbing lack of any care at all. Meanwhile, we're losing 9 servers to college in the fall, and I am 1 out of 2 or 3 bartenders. And this is how you want to treat us? I ended up speaking with the closing manager when they came in. They weren't even informed of the issue, or that I had offered to bartend until 8. Go to the GM and owner, you say. Well, I would, if this manager in question weren't their sugar baby. Ultimately, after asking my 11 to 9 co-workers if they wanted a bartender, and getting the approval of the closing manager, I bartended after my opening shift, and after getting an extremely generous tip from my very first patron, decided to just work the 8 to 10. There's obviously more to my frustration than this single incident, but it's just too much to fit into one post. To get the gist of it, there's conflicts of interest all through management, and there's no appreciation shown to employees. Ever. Full stop. Some of who, I will admit I am not in this category, I know my limits, and I don't think it's healthy, have been working 50 to 60-hour weeks through some of the worst financially and mentally trying times in recent fucking history. And yes, I am searching for a new job, starting immediately. 3. I, 23 and female, used to work at a mom-and-pop Italian place from 16 to 19. When I say mom-and-pop, I mean 22 tables in the whole restaurant, 1 server, maybe 2 on weekdays. I started as a cashier and moved up to server when I turned 18. One of my very first serving shift by myself was a lunch shift. Now, we had some really large portions, and lunch was half of the dinner portions, but still quite big. So this very petite young girl comes in by herself to dine in. I'm super excited as she's my first table of the day. She sits down, orders her drink, and I come back with it, and the free garlic knots. She orders the chicken parm meal that comes with spaghetti and tomato sauce on it. Cool, normal order. All entrees come with a choice of soup or salad. She asks if she can also have a side of fettuccine alfredo. I let her know that her meal already comes with spaghetti and tomato sauce, but I can change it to fettuccine alfredo for an extra charge if she would like. She insists on getting the side of fettuccine, as well as the pasta that comes with her meal. I ask her if she's sure about 6 times, and let her know very clearly that that will be a lot of food and more money than just switching her pasta. But she tells me that she doesn't care and shoos me away. I reluctantly put in the order. In hindsight, I should have just substituted, but I was a brand new server, didn't know any better. I bring out the food, and she is appalled at how much food there is. She starts freaking out like she's about to have a panic attack. I basically tell her, I told you this was gonna happen, but a lot nicer than that. I said that I can take the food back and replate it and adjust the pricing so she doesn't pay for the extra side of pasta. She refuses and just tells me to bring her a side of Alfredo sauce, and she's gonna put it on her spaghetti and tomato sauce. Not wanting to argue with her, I just do as she says. I bring out her extra Alfredo sauce, and I watch her start messing with her food and looking like she was about to vomit. She asks for her check in the box, pays no tip, of course, and then leaves her box of food on the table. Looking back, I think she may have had some kind of eating disorder because the way she spoke about the food, the way she looked at it. She looked ashamed to even be in a restaurant. I don't know. It all was such a strange interaction, and I still think about her to this day and wonder if she's okay. 4. Some background. I work as a Depang chef at a, we'll call it Henibana. For those not in the loop, that means we bring food to your table and cook it in front of you. Do some juggling and fire tricks too. Here's my general routine, and by general, I mean I do this many, many times a day. 1. Approach table and greet them. 2. Go through their orders, person by person, to make sure the server rang everything in correctly. 3. A brief juggling show, and then I start to cook. Now on this specific table, the server had made a mistake, and had forgotten to ring up an entree. Not normally a big deal, except the people who ordered it decided to wait to tell me about it until after I was done cooking the entire meal, some 45 minutes later. Frustrating, but not the end of the world. I apologize, explain that this is why I make sure to confirm the orders, and offered to cook the entree for them. They refuse, so I offered to cook it as to go. With one entree in the back, I can cook the whole thing in 5 minutes. And I explain this. They refuse, so I say, well, I'm sorry this happened, folks, and start to leave. At which point, the full-grown man whose entree got lost's mother stops me and starts to chew me out for the mistake. I apologize and explain that since the order wasn't on the ticket and they didn't bring it up when I confirmed their orders, I didn't even know it existed. At which point the lady starts accusing me of lying and not having checked their orders. Now, I'll put up with a lot of stuff from customers. Angry people, nasty people, people who talk down to me because they're somehow convinced that they're superior to a student working his way through college. But something I don't tolerate from anyone is being lied to my face. So I repeat again. I'm sorry, ma'am, there's clearly been a misunderstanding. But I promise you I checked the orders before I started. I do it with every table and every seat all day long. Again, she calls me a liar, at which point one of the other guests at the table speaks up to say, "No, he definitely checked our orders." This causes her to absolutely lose her shit with me, to the point where I decide to get a manager. And as I turn to walk away saying, "I'll get a manager for you," I feel her grab the back collar of my chef's coat and yank on it. I'm not a touchy person. I do not like being touched, mostly due to some very severe childhood trauma. I rarely give hugs even to close family members and friends. And above all else, I hate being touched without my consent. It happens a lot, and I'm normally very good at just ignoring it. But something about this woman reaching out and grabbing me, especially near my neck, just set me off. I whipped around and admittedly quite sternly said, "Ma'am, I know you're frustrated, but you may not touch me. I have tried to resolve the issue for you, and it is clear that it is not within my power. So I'm going to get a manager. Now, I'm going to turn around again to push my cart away from the table. If you grab me again, I will call the police on you." Then I grabbed my cart and wheeled it out from the table, only stopping to let my manager and the table's server and one of the managers that they're needed at the table. 5 minutes later, my manager comes back, asks me what happened, and then goes, "Oh wow, that would explain the complaint." I look at her and go, "What did they say?" And she says, "Nothing, but the people 2 tables down said that you were being too aggressive with the customer." If explaining to someone that assault is something worth calling the police over is too aggressive, then my first instinct of just fucking decking her probably wouldn't have gone over very well. 5. I used to work at an extremely busy coffeehouse spot in my city when I was still completing my first degree. We used to get absolutely slammed every single day with an extremely fast table turnover. People constantly coming in and out with the takeaway area, a big inside area, and a massive outside strip. It was a mess. People would walk around, shift tables all the time, etc. It was extremely stressful, and I was on my feet every day for 9 hours as soon as our doors opened at 6. We allowed customers to pay in cash, card, or SnapScan. Basically, we had a little Nokia phone where the SnapScan transactions would come through, and we had to print the receipt, go inside and find the phone from whatever employee had it, and match one of the 5 incoming payments with the correct amount in order to verify that the customer had paid the correct amount, and that they could leave, and the table could be closed. I'm working a crazy shift. There's only 3 of us on the floor, and we each have like 12 tables each, constantly changing and leaving and ordering, etc. We've got a lot of very horrible impatient cyclists who would throw a tantrum at the slightest wait or fault, so it's a very stressful time. I'm inside doing my job and bringing food to tables, and without communicating anything to me, my manager brings over the SnapScan code to a table outside who I had brought food to maybe 7 minutes ago. I was about to check on them, but had to get orders in first. Well, I see the table is empty next time I look over. I dashed to my manager to ask her if she saw where my table went, as they hadn't ordered the bill for me, and I was worried they hadn't paid. She says, "Oh, no worries, I gave them the SnapScan code." I said, "Oh, great, let me have the receipt so I can mark off the payment on the phone." There's no payment for that amount and no smaller payments that could add up to that amount. Essentially, she gave them the code and didn't check that their payment went through, and it didn't go through. It was a big bill, sizable in my country, to spend on breakfast, and would have been a great tip. So now she's stressing and saying it's my fault. I should have a better grip on where my tables are at in the dining experience, etc. I should be more attentive to the customers, etc. I say, I feel like you could have at least told me my table was paying so I could check if you were too busy to follow up on the bill that you gave them. I didn't even know they were leaving. "Oh, come now, you knew they were leaving, take some responsibility." She's making me feel like absolute shit. I continue with the shift and power it out with no problems until 4. Come the end of the day, when it's time to work out tips and earnings, she tells me it's a pity about the table earlier because I just got less that amount in tips. But seeing as I messed up that table, it's coming off my tips and I'm now paying out of pocket the extra 100 rand that she couldn't deduct from tips because there was nothing left. I told her I don't understand, I don't feel like this is fair. I'm a student and I can't afford to just fork out this cash and lose today's earnings. I literally have tears in my eyes. She just looks at me and goes, "Well, somebody's got to pay it." I never looked at her the same way. When I left to go focus on my postgraduate, she begged me to come work at her new restaurant venture she was managing at, because she wanted to impress her bosses by having the best staff all ready to go when it launched. I declined. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Spinning Plates, episode 146. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. If you enjoyed the video, then please do like, subscribe, and comment, and all that wonderful, delightful stuff. It is helpful to me and helpful to the channel, therefore helpful to me because I am the channel. Alright, here we are. This is a Saturday. This video might go up a little bit later than usual on a Saturday. Not super late. Sorry about the weird uploads on the usual Thursday, Friday videos. Them go up at weird times, basically up a day after. Essentially busy week for me. Everything was up in the air. Caught up now. Upload times will be more reasonable. And a wizard did it. Yeah, that's what happened. But yeah, I've been looking at the activity times on my channel. I've been meaning to look for it. Didn't know where to look for it, but I found it with a little help. And it tells me when people are most active, like what time of the day, which is really, really helpful. So I'm going to follow that a little bit. So things will fluctuate by a few hours, depending on the day. Some of my times were fairly close, actually. Others were a little bit off, so I was missing my optimal audience. But we're going to do our best to correct that. Because if we think something's not right, we make an adjustment. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.